Instagram is not. Oh, there we are. Okay, so I think that we are live. I'm going to see if I can get us. I don't know how to do that. I was going to try to make it so this was all I could see, but oh, here we go. There we go. So hello, everybody. If you happen to catch us, I'm Diane Hillary, and this is my dear friend Sarah Norris, and I am a psychotherapist by training, and I'm doing a lot more spirituality coaching and intuitive coaching these days. And Sarah, I'll let you tell a little bit about your background and your work.
Sure. I'm an occupational therapist by training, but like Diane, I've been moving more into coaching and exploring more like holistic approaches to wellness and shifting my focus from supporting disability to really supporting wellness. And I love bridging this gap and starting to shift the narrative from more of that medical model to more of a strengths-based model, thinking about what a healthy neurodivergent person is in particular. So this has been something that Diane and I have been exploring together, and it's been part of our own journeys. And I feel like we've, in this season that we've known each other, really synced up, and it feels like a connection with a fellow pioneer where we're like out exploring the wilderness, but not alone. And it's been so lovely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things we've talked about a lot in exploring our own neurodivergence and our work with our highly sensitive or neurodivergent identifying clients is the connection with the body. And last night in one of your groups, we were talking about interoception and just this idea that when you're highly sensitive and you grow up in our culture with maybe there are kids these days that are highly sensitive that are getting, more attunement to those needs and getting some understanding of their own sensitivities. But that was not the case, I think, when we were growing up. And I have an adult diagnosis of sensory processing disorder, but I don't think that was something, I don't know when that diagnosis came about, but I was born in 1977. I don't think that many kids were getting that diagnosis then. And so just basically then having a body and a nervous system that was always trying to overcompensate for, if you think of like the basic, the way our educational system works. And I was in a specialized school where I only had a few kids in my class. That was, looking back, it was a group of neurodivergent kids in that class. But still, like there's fluorescent lighting and there's an expectation to sit still and there's, certain ways to behave. And so there's a lot of like, oh, it doesn't really matter what my body needs or feels. What matters is to behave and to achieve and to perform. And, I think that is reinforced with the way that the paradigm of parenting, the paradigm of education that we both grew up in. And throughout my adult life, I have been sitting in my own therapy and saying to my therapist, I just feel tired all the time, or I'm really struggling with a low mood. I look at sometimes I would bring my to-do list into therapy and be like, I don't know how I'm expected to get all these things done. And even early in my career, I recognized like, I don't seem to be able to work full time in the same way that other people can and still, function or still be a mom at home. And so even with some of that awareness and being on this long-term journey to, in my own therapy, in my own inner work to figure out like, how do I, feel happier? How do I feel more well-adjusted? How do I take care of myself? There was still, I feel like just this baseline of self-denial. And it doesn't seem, I feel like there's a part of the self-denial that was, that is unique to me. Like, I feel like, I don't think my parents were, really giving me that mindset, but I was like, my siblings were not necessarily that same way. I was
Mhm.
always like, I can do with less. I can, you know, like there was like a strength in like, I don't need anything. Um, so over the last 5 years specifically, I've been really trying to slow down more and more and see and get reconnected with my body. And so you and I have sometimes joked like, oh, my body has so many needs. I, just gave it this rest and now it wants more rest. Um, and so I'd love to hear anything you want to share about your connection with your body and your learning to basically be in communication. Like if our body is this is the one body we have for this lifetime, and we have a lot of training to override its signals, also from religion, 100% trained to override our body signals from Christianity that I experienced. And so tell us anything you want to share about how that's bubbling up for you right now.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different things that I could just echo from what you shared. And I think I'll just highlight a few different things that you didn't bring up. So, kind of like ditto what Diane said, but a couple of things that I'll bring in for myself. I can remember back when I had first started college, that was actually a really hard transition for me, um, in a way that didn't make sense. I was really high achieving in high school and I was involved in everything. I knew everyone at my super small high school. And while I don't think I was popular, I felt like I belonged and I had connection. And going to college, I decided to go to a college that was several states away from where I had gone to high school. And while there were a few people that from my high school that went to that same college with me, didn't have any classes with anybody that I knew. And I really, really struggled with taking care of myself, particularly around rest and eating. Um, because that high achieving part of me was still very much in the driver's seat. And so it was, how do I be the most impressive student? And I had chosen to do journalism as my major when I first started. And I am very grateful for the class that I had where we were supposed to do, I don't remember exactly what the assignment was, but it was like a research and inform kind of assignment for I think like a marketing class I was taking.
Mhm.
And I chose to do it on self-care. And I think in some like subconscious way, I knew that was something that I needed to understand. I needed to amplify in my own life because I was struggling. But I can remember very distinctly how much there's like that pop culture version of self care where it's like take a bubble bath, meditate, do a facial. And I don't know. I feel like that kind of was the beginning of me recognizing wait a minute, this is not the path for me. So I actually around that time I did that project, had this realization of I don't want to pursue journalism. And I had a little bit of that, what am I going to do? And I have a lot of gratitude that I found occupational therapy at that point in time, because I don't think if I had not studied that, I would be where I am today with my relationship with my body and my self-care and my emotional intelligence. And it's just so many layers that I'm still healing, I'm still learning. And I think I'll just throw in one more thing because I think it's something that is very much connected to this disconnect with the body that can happen. And I know I'm not alone in this experience. When I was in my late 20s, I had gotten out of school, I'd done some jobs, gotten married, and I was working full time and I had moved into a leadership role. And, from the outside looking in, I had it all and I had a bright future. But then I started to have just inexplicable health problems and doctors couldn't tell me what it was. I had all the tests. Finally, the only explanation that was left was fibromyalgia at the time. So I got a fibromyalgia diagnosis. I started to get treatment for that. And, looking back now, I can recognize that was my body really just telling me it needed tending to. But I was so much just about that drive of achievement and continuing that, just be impressive. That's where my identity was very much on that external. How do I appear to others? And it's been a process to unlearn that and to just even imagine, is there a different way to be? And I'm grateful that I've discovered, yes, there is.
Yeah. Yeah, that story kind of reminds me of one of my favorite books by Martha Beck called The Way of Integrity. And she talks about culture versus inner compass, and the
Mm.
idea that we often are on that path to like whatever the culture that we were raised in, whatever those goals were, whether it's, achievement or marriage or having a family. Um, those are, some common things that we might be socialized to be working towards. Like I'm going through school with this goal, and then I go to college with that goal, and then and we arrive at a certain place that is like, this is what I've been working for, and then we're like, this doesn't really feel that good. And so she talks about, that's when we awaken to like, oh wait, some of these were cultural values and they're not actually my values, and they're not actually what alights my energy or what brings me joy or what feels aligned for me. And then she talks about in her life everything kind of came toppling down, and she had a big shift, but she encourages folks to like, what's your 1 degree shift to get more in alignment with what your body's telling you or what your inner compass says or your values. And I like thinking about what does our body know? What is our body telling us? And how do we learn to listen? Because I think I have been trying to listen to my body for so many years, but there were so many layers of programming and belief systems about, I should be able to perform in the way that other people can. Why don't I have as much energy as them? And not understanding that they might not be impacted by the sounds and the noises and the lights in the way I am. Or, for me, it also ties into, this is getting away from the body a little bit, I guess, but it's also been helpful for me to understand my Enneagram type and my astrology and my human design. Um, and then just having quiet, time in nature or in meditation or in conversation with friends to get in touch with, yeah, what really does like light me up and excite me that's different from like what have I been taught to achieve or want. Um, so what does that bring up for you? I'm getting away from the body a little bit, and maybe you want to bring
Mm.
us back, or maybe you want to follow.
I'm going to say you're not at all, actually, because what you were just talking about, getting in touch with integrity, getting in an alignment with your values, what lights you up, interoception and the body is actually what helps you know that.
Mm.
So yes, it's conversational, it's experiential, but the way that we know if something is for us or not, if it's a yes or a no, is absolutely through those body signals. And I think there's this divide in like the scientific way that we perceive the body, and then the actual like intuitive lived experience of having a body, which is so much richer than the way that the science talks about it.
Mm.
And I'm just going to share how there was like such a synchronicity with you bringing up Martha Beck's book. I've never read it,
Mm-hmm.
but everything that you said was like, oh my goodness, that is absolutely the way I think about my relationship with my body. And interoception in particular, in my book, I even talk about there being this inner compass. And to
Mm.
me, that's interoception.
Mm-hmm.
So you absolutely were continuing to talk about the body without even knowing it, because it's all connected.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so tell us a definition of interoception in case there are some people who are listening. And I think we should be able to follow the comments, but I don't know how to do that yet. So, so we'll have to figure that out in the future. But tell us whatever you want to share about the definition of interoception.
Sure. So interoception is everything that's that internal sense of self, that internal sensation. So it's a huge umbrella. And I think sometimes it's easier to say what it's not because then everything else is.
Mm-hmm.
So exteroception is our perception of the world outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 5 senses that we all learn about early on. So what we can see, what we can hear, what we can feel on our skin, what we can taste, and what we can smell. Mm-hmm. So that's giving us information about the world around us. And that's when we're in school, when we're growing up, that's the avenue that we learn through. And so it's very emphasized. Pay attention to your senses. And a lot of scientific experiments are absolutely based on measurable external data. But interoception is all the things that happen on the inside of our bodies. And there's this almost like handoff from the external world. So the color of your glasses, for example, mm-hmm. There is a visual component to that. It's data. When I see them and I have a response of like, oh, those are so cute. I love that color. Oh my goodness, they are just so perfect for you. That response is all about how I feel about the color and about you. And mm-hmm. It's this interpretation from the external to the internal that they work in tandem. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the information out there about interoception right now, particularly from occupational therapists, is a little bit more about treating your body like a science experiment. So notice how it feels to you to just have the contrast between hot and cold, for example. So maybe you have hot water and cold water, an ice cube and a hot pack, and beginning to just notice like what happens to your body when you interact with something external, and beginning to notice that internal response of, do I like this? Do I not? Mm-hmm. When do I like this? So when I'm injured and I'm sweaty and I'm hot, I like the cold. When I'm cold or tired, I like the warm. And so there's such a rich experience that is not static with our internal experience. Mm-hmm. And that makes it sometimes hard to be able to define it. It's not measurable in the same way that our external data is like, that color of red will always be that color of red. Mm-hmm. Unless there's different lighting conditions, but mm-hmm. So I don't know if that was a helpful definition. I could definitely talk more about it if you feel like any of that was unclear.
Yeah, no. So it's basically going to that idea of inner compass, like you were saying, that and I think that for many of my clients, they talk about like, people ask me what I want and I don't really know how to answer that. Mm-hmm. And I think there can be so many factors with that. For me, I noticed that I have what I would describe from an internal family systems perspective as protector parts that were trained to keep me safe by kind of going along to get along, or by staying hypervigilant to like, what does that person seem to be feeling? And what about that person? And how do I just, stay safe by going along? And so I've got a protector part that for me is often a manager, meaning like it's one of my main driver's seat parts that is like, can pretty quickly tell, like read the room and then just go with like a suggestion that would probably go well with whoever's in the room. Mm-hmm. And so that has gotten me away from even being able to know, like, what would I like to eat? What sounds good? What am I craving? What am I longing for? And it kind of reminds me, I always go back to that scene from the Julia Roberts movie, Runaway Bride. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's one scene after she leaves a few of the relationships that she's been in, or she's revisiting them. And she's like, in that relationship, I was like sporty like he was, or I was into hiking like he was, and I ate these kind of eggs because he did. So she cooks all the eggs and goes and tries each one to see what she likes. And then what I hear you saying is it's not even like, what do we like? It's what do we like when, or how do we feel with this stimuli in this situation. Um, and to really be able to feel into that takes some slowness, some exploration, some experimentation, and we have such busy lives that it makes sense that if you are very sensitive and you've sort of piled layers up around not knowing really what your body's telling you and kind of ignoring. So many of my clients might have a hard time connecting with when they're hungry or when they're full. They might just override, like, well, I was working so I didn't stop to eat, or I didn't even notice I was thirsty. What does thirst feel like? I'm not even sure. um, and so all of that takes some unwinding and exploration to figure it out. And
Yes.
and then to, like, maybe now now that I've slowed things down a lot and been exploring my body's signals, I still it still takes it's almost like a conversation, where for me, I will say, like, okay, I've got this, sensation that's kind of bubbly in my heart. Let me pause. And I approach it maybe more from an intuitive perspective of, like, and a conversation, like, hello, bubbly sensation, I feel you there. And I sort of start from a place of gratitude, even if it's an unpleasant sensation. I still like to imagine that I'm having, like, a playful, childlike conversation sometimes, and say, hello, sharp pain in my head. Like, thank you for being there. What are you trying to communicate to me? What would you like to say?
Mm.
And some of it is like, I have these, like, oh, I have this pain in my head. I'm going to take this medicine. But lately I've been like, I don't know, like, that's the pattern I've had in the past. But did that pattern come from really listening to
Mm.
the sensation, or did it come just from an autopilot of, like, how can I make this go away so I can keep working?
Mhm.
So I like that. For me, that makes it accessible for me to make it, like, to engage my inner child in curiosity and exploration and make it seem like playful and fun, like I'm talking to a buddy with the body sensation, and then I just listen and see if it has anything to say. How does
Mhm.
it work for you in communicating with your body, or listening or hearing?
Well, I feel like I've learned so much from you from self-compassion, like your training in mindful self-compassion, and digging into Kristen Neff's work and also Tara Brach. That ability to be with your whatever you're feeling with compassion and acceptance and even that playfulness. I feel like that's such a flavor of self-compassion
Mhm,
that has been so beneficial to me. I don't think that that's where I started for sure. But I think that's where it actually started to come home to where I could start making some forward momentum with my body and my relationship with how I was just reacting to different things. Um, I do really identify with what I've known is like my peacemaker part that you were kind of describing, like walking into the room and being able to identify and I almost always have had this instinct to like de-escalate any tension, any conflict, um, which in some ways was a very helpful thing that I developed, but in other ways, yeah, it was kind of self-sacrificial most of the time. Of I can't worry about what I want or need right now. Um, it's more of that like smoothing my external environment to make it tolerable and hopefully better for everyone. But like you were saying, there can be that loss of, well, what do I want and need in that process? And one of the ways that I talk about this with some of my clients is how we, with interoception and exteroception, it's almost like we have like these dual sliders that
mhm,
that kind of work like this. So if I'm more internally tuned, then I can like turn off the external. Um, but if I'm external, I might really need to silence that internal voice. And the idea is to figure out how we can get a little bit more of that mid range of like both can simultaneously exist,
mhm,
because that's you taking up space, that's you existing, that's you mattering, and that should be equal with everything else.
mhm.
Um, I have a little practice that we could do together if you wanted to.
Sure.
So, and anybody watching, you're welcome to try this with us. So, I just invite you to just close your eyes. And you might notice the shift of what was coming in visually to what's there now. And I actually have like an outline of you, Diane, in
Mm.
my visual field. So I was looking at you, and the backlight from my computer kind of burned that into my vision, but it's fading. And so I'm just encouraging you to let go of that external world and turn inward and check in with yourself. And I'm just noticing in my body, ooh, I was holding some tension. My posture was like pretty tight. And part of that was excitement, part of that was performance. And so by turning inward, I'm able to let that go for just a moment. And
Yeah,
so,
I can feel a little bit of like a sensation of I've had this sensation often, and I feel like it's something I'm growing. It's like I call it my puffed out chest feeling. And
mm,
um, when I first experienced this in a guided meditation that someone else was leading me through, I was like, I don't know what this feeling is. It feels like my chest is puffing out. And eventually I landed on like it's a feeling of confidence.
mm,
It was, interesting that when I first felt it, I was like, I can't imagine what this feeling is because confidence wasn't a frequency or a feeling that I was like, oh, yeah, I know just how that feels.
mm.
Um, and so it's fun to when it pops up sometimes and it feels like I'm holding my shoulders back and my head straight and I feel grounded and like sort of believing in myself and supporting myself. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to guide us out and we can unpack that just a little bit. But just that final moment of being with yourself, just notice what it's like. And you might even just notice, is there a way to turn up that slider to that internal awareness just a little bit more? And that might be through tuning into your breath or feeling your feet on the ground or doing a just quick body scan of what's my body feeling. And taking a moment with that, thanking that, and preparing to release that and return to the external world. And I like to say, don't say goodbye. Say, I'm still here to
Mm,
keep that connection with your internal self. But also have this gradual return to the room. And one way to do that is to just very slowly open your eyes just a little bit. You might see some colors or some shapes. And if you like math, you could be like, okay, what's that 20% shift of I'm letting 20% of the outside world in, but I'm still 80% internal. And then slowly sliding that to maybe 40% and 50%. You should be able to let the external world come into focus
mhm.
and just see it. Can you still feel the internal?
Yeah, I love that.
And then that connection with you, bringing my eyes back up to you. Where
Mhm,
am I? And just notice, like, how much did that slider shift for me?
mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's a good feeling to still be able to feel the connection with my internal world, and I think that's, the this is what's coming up for me is, since I had the slider of my internal experience, low, I mean, in one way, I would say it was low in terms of me being really connected and responsive to my hungers, like not just physical hunger, but like what I longed for, what I needed, what I wanted, what interests me, what excites me. Um, I think those were all very low. but my body was still very loud. Like I would be like, still spend a lot of time talking about like, I'm so exhausted or like
Mhm.
itchy all over, or um, because it was so uncomfortable all the time and in so much distress and so hungry for
Mhm.
so many different things. Um, but um, but as I have shifted, as I turned up like the slider on what my body was really longing for instead of just that like surface distress, it brought up like um, a lot of hidden grief. Like it,
Mhm.
so it basically, I think I'm responding basically to something you said recently that was not in this conversation. So maybe I should make that clear. But you said something like, once we start to listen, like it makes sense that we have the slider turned down low. If there's like, if we turned it up, if there would be, all kinds of overwhelming or unpleasant sensation.
Mhm.
That was my experience with turning the slider up, was that there was a lot of, like sometimes I picture it like my energy is like a cup, and I had like squished down a lot of feelings that I didn't want to feel or didn't even maybe remember that I had in there or wasn't aware. Um,
Mhm.
and so I did have to give some space in my life to working with a somatic coach and letting those sensations and the emotions come up so that I could then hear like the subtle cues of my body without them needing to scream, like, you're ignoring us. We're in pain. There's so much stuffed in here.
Yes. Yes. And I think that can be one of the biggest barriers to actually reconnecting with our internal selves is if we've sort of been silencing those notifications from our body
Hmm.
for so long. Like I silence, like I don't um, pay attention to the notifications on my phone a lot of the time. And I know I'm not alone. There's a lot of people that just can't deal with that ping all the time. But when I go in to check my notifications, it's like scroll, scroll, scroll. I'm just going to ignore all of them.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is kind of an external way that mirrors the way that I've been with my internal notifications.
Hmm.
And so our body is very wise in figuring out, okay, you want to silence that notification? I'll send a bigger, louder one. Oh,
Hmm.
you silenced that one too? Okay, I guess I'll send an even bigger and louder one.
Hmm.
And our nervous system is so intelligent that it will actually borrow other signals. And pain is one that it will get to. If
Hmm.
we ignore every other signal, pain and illness will stop us in our tracks.
Yeah.
And that's what my experience was in my 20s was I had been silencing all of those notifications from my body. And finally my body was like, enough of this.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
got my attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that same experience. Mine was after college in my early 20s, and I couldn't get any diagnosis from my regular doctors, and I tried naturopathic doctors, but I just really didn't ever find any information that was helpful or gave me any relief. And so I just lived with the chronic pain, and that just led to more overriding because I had kids when I was young, and I was working, and I was just like, I guess, and some of my clients have given me the feedback like, yeah, you were pretty focused on like life is just suffering and we have to deal with that and learn how to cope with it, which is like a very, like the Tara Brach and the Buddhist approach of non-attachment to suffering. And I think that was a way that I was trying to survive at the time. Like I'm in pain all the time and I still have to do all these things. And I've tried all the outlets I have access to. I've tried therapy and Western medicine and functional medicine, and I don't have any relief. Um, and it does seem like, you know, it, there is an aspect of like, if you're trying to say like, Like from Christianity, I had the message of like lay down your life for others like Jesus did. And from Buddhism, I had the message of like don't be attached to your suffering. You know, life is suffering. Resistance to suffering is what causes the problems. So I was just doing a lot of acceptance of like
Mhm.
my self-sacrificing and my ignoring of my body's cues and just being like what like how can I be gentle with myself and what small steps can I take? um, and I think that made sense that I was trying to survive that way at the time. And also I'm grateful to have done the somatic work to clear out some of that stored up emotional pain, and let that grief, you know, vent and release so that I can have access to more joy in my body and more peace.
Yeah, and I love, one of the very first projects we worked on together was a presentation on bringing self compassion and sensation together.
Hmm.
And there is so much, there's a lot of benefit from learning how to accept, learning to be with suffering, learning how to, detach from our attachments and all of that. There's
Hmm.
so much value in that. But it's so empowering to also discover, wait a minute, it can be different. I can experience pleasure and joy and excitement and energy and feeling like there's a way to do that. And a big part of that is learning what is in alignment for you, what lights you up inside,
Hmm.
what is your passion, and what are all those yeses that you've also been ignoring.
Yeah.
The you called it like your hungers, your desires,
Hmm.
and feeling like finding a way of like, wait a minute, I can actually have that. I have the power to have that.
Hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Martha Beck talks about like when you've like created a life for yourself based on the internalized cultural values, and then you start to realize like, oh, this isn't really what I am desiring in my bones. This isn't really what lights me up or what's aligned with me. And so there's a lot of fear for me of you coming out as queer and how would that impact my family and my sense of self and all the feelings that I would have to deal with if I, you know, stepped away from like the comfortable, the painful yet like safe, comfortable in that it was safe or familiar or known, um, like life I had constructed, and step into like some of the things that really light me up are outside the box of what I had internalized as traditional or good or what I was aiming for. And so that is also a part of my process has been like, and I like the idea of like, okay, it's a 1 degree turn, it's like a 2 degree turn. Like, how can I let this part of myself show a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until I feel safe inside with myself so that other people can feel however they want because I'm creating that inner safety.
Yeah. And it's nice to have that on the horizon and to even have like a taste of like I got a little bit of that today.
Mhm.
And knowing that that is something that can grow with practice and intention.
Yeah.
And it is counterculture in a lot of ways, and especially that intersection of all of the different layers. And I think a lot of masking your neurodivergence to fit in that we're trained to do from an early age, at least people of our generation were definitely trained to do from
Mhm.
an early age. Um, there's there's both a fear and a vulnerability to stepping in that direction. And I like the concept of titration from somatic experiencing of it's okay to have the approach retreat with your desires, with changes you want to make. And it makes a lot of sense that your nervous system is going to have this battle of I want it, but my whole life I haven't been able to have what I want. And I've had to deal with, you know, just always being disappointed and then disappointing myself, internalizing that pattern. And it takes time to kind of be very bold and determined of like, no, I'm gonna do it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that approach and retreat, like the I have over the last 5 years, I've needed to be like, okay, I'm going to talk about this change, but not make it yet. And I'm going to dream about this change, but I'm not ready to step into it yet. And using my imagination and having friends who will listen to me talk about the same things over and over, even though I'm not ready to take action on them yet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a time where it just flows more naturally. And also I have, I think it's valuable to have been patient with myself because there was so much my body was processing with all the change.
Definitely.
Well, is there anything else you want to share?
Well, I feel like we could definitely continue to talk about this, but I think for our own energy and anybody's energy who's watching, it might be wise to say it's a good place to bookmark this.
Mm.
And I'm excited about continuing to have conversations like this with you. We have them. We've been having them privately for years now, but for both of us, we have a passion for wanting to make this what we've discovered more accessible to more people, and wanting to build more connection and a network of other people who also know what we know and are walking the same path with us. And we both have ways that we're cultivating community in our own ways. And I'm just excited to continue to have these conversations with you and see what happens.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think it's so important to share stories about waking up and about all the tools that we're gathering, and also just to feel connected in, like, it can be so painful to be human, and we are living through such tumultuous times, and for other, heart-centered folks who are wanting to figure out how, like, I keep coming back to building community and, like, having a body that can learn how to find inner peace in the midst of outer chaos, and then offering that in the communities that I'm creating and connected to is my act of um, compassionate, radical compassion in revolutionary times. And so that's, what I hope we can keep talking about and sharing and building community around.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me here to have this conversation. And I really look forward to the next time we get to do it.
Me too. Thanks. Let's see if I can figure out how to stop the live now. Bye, everyone.